We are a nationwide campaign that launched in October last year, having grown out of a similar campaign in Greater Wellington. In the 5 months since its launch, our coalition has grown to 60 plus organisations, including the Union Council of Trade Unions, the New Zealand Union of Students Associations, Gen Zero, 350 and Greenpeace, and also the Wellington and Christchurch City Missions, as well as the Action Station and Poverty Action Waikato, and many more. We've also had 9 local and district councils also vote in support, which is incredible. And our most recent new supporters include NZEI, Te Reo Roa, and the Intergenerational Climate Ambassadors, and as of last night, the City Vision Group of Councillors in Auckland. So you can see there's a huge support for this kaupapa. It's really important, and we're just so pleased that so many people have joined on to support. Some of these groups are represented here today, and many more are watching online. So thank you for tuning into our live streams, guys. Today we're here to deliver a petition. We're calling on the Minister of Transport to implement free public transport for community services cardholders, full-time and part-time students, and under 25s nationwide. We want to see this fully funded by the government in Budget 2022, and we want to acknowledge the work the government and Minister have already made. The Minister have already done to initiate the Community Connect pilot in Auckland, and will trial half price fares for community service card holders for 3 years, as well as this week's announcement of half price public transport for 3 months, which is incredible work, but there's still more to do. So I'd like to introduce our first set of speakers today. This is Jack and Lily from Mana College in Porirua. These are 2 high school students from who are super invested in creating a sustainable future for our generation and the next. So please welcome Jack and Lily.
Everyone is aware of how climate change is affecting our world, but it's an even more pressing matter for people like young people such as myself and Jack, as we're the ones who are going to be fighting against and experiencing its effects for the duration of our lifetime. So by having free fares for under 25s, it is one way that we can reduce our carbon footprint and be more sustainable without having to sacrifice our non-existent wealth. I'm Lily, I'm 16, and I'm a massive supporter of free fares because I think that if public transport was free for under 25s, it would incentivise people to use public transport more than their own private vehicles, especially people around the age of like 16 to 19 when we're getting our various licences. A group of girls I know were telling me how they didn't want to pay the $7 fare into Wellington by train, and because they all had their restricted licences, they couldn't carpool. This means they ended up taking 6 individual cars into Wellington, which is not sustainable at all and causes so much needless greenhouse gases to be emitted. Cars are kind of seen as a status symbol, especially for people my age. If you drive somewhere rather than taking public transport, you're just like automatically cooler, it's just a thing. And while petrol is ridiculously expensive, current public transport is also quite costly, and so cars are seen as the better option. If we took the cost element out of public transport for under 25s, I think that people will be willing to sacrifice a small slice of their reputation and take public transport more, as it being free makes it a very attractive prospect.
Mōrena, ko Jack tōku ingoa, no tanu waka hau, ko te kaumawhiti o koutou. If fares were free for people under 25, we would be able to get places we need to go without having to reconsider our plans based on how much money we have or are willing to spend. When fares get expensive, it means we are less likely to use the train or bus and more likely to get a ride from our parents, as this is easier and cheaper for us. Again, it's really hard being sustainable when you don't have a lot of money. So if we want to be a sustainable green country, helping people who aren't cashed up, such as under 25s who have less financial freedom, is 100% necessary, and free fares is a really good start. This way we can help people in harder situations to get where they need to without having to take personal transport and release so much more greenhouse gas emissions. As young people, we are very climate aware and want to pursue greener methods of living. And this would allow us to do that in transport without much of a barrier. Then we are contributing to a sustainable future for ourselves and generations to follow. This would also help massively to normalise public transport habits for the next generation, which would stop people from buying cars as they come into adulthood, as there is no need, thus leaving us as a country where transport has much less impact on its emissions. This would be huge, as we as a country have some of the highest per capita vehicle ownership rates around the globe. So, support free fares to be rolled out nationwide and create a transport system rid of emissions that doesn't hurt the people within it.
Hi, I am Wesley Giles Bedford. As Lizzo just mentioned, I work at the Free Store. I depend on the bus to get to and from the Free Store. It's quite expensive to go in to do this work because I don't get paid for it. But I feel that for charity workers, community service card users, and disabled community, that free fares should be a thing so that they can get where they want to go without any additional costs. Plus also, the main thing is public transit also needs to be reliable. If it can't be reliable and free if the buses don't even run. I've had 2 emergencies where I've needed public transport and it was not available. So as part of this campaign, I would like to also improve the reliability of public transport, because if it is free, it can't be usable if it's not running either. So that's all I have to say.
Kia ora, Bula, I'm Kushbu. As Lilo said, I'm part of Mosa. I live in Te Awakairangi, Lower Hutt, and I rely on public transport to get to uni. But due to the costs of public transport, I have to limit my days at uni to 3 or 4 days, as the costs of public transport is pretty high, and to account for other living costs, we need to save that every dollar matters. And I know that's the case for many students that live outside of central Wellington region and feel that in order to live, they need to sacrifice their uni experience. We are in a cost of living crisis and every cent counts at the moment, and I know that if we were to have free public transport, it would greatly impact students across the country.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for turning out today, and Minister and MP for coming along to accept the petition from the team. The students have done an amazing job in getting to this stage. I speak today with a voice for people with disability and total mobility clients, and many of whom are in the older population, as I am myself. So really appreciate the effort of the students. It's not only about you, it is also about our older population, but it is your world going forward. Disabled people have a disproportionately difficult time over the last couple of years as COVID has impacted negatively on their lives. They are people who use public transport as their primary form of transport, as many don't even own private vehicles or don't have any access to private vehicles. They've been impacted from not being able to board a bus because of rear entry door only and not being able to access the front door to get on, and the result of this has been isolation and just not going out. Too often they're the first off in employment as businesses either cut back or close. We see free fares as a great opportunity for people to rebuild connections with their communities and in their lives, and for an investment in government. An investment for government to build back public transport services to an exemplary standard that makes public transport the first choice for everyone, whether it's students or our older people. So we really commend this effort to Minister Wood today, and thank you very much for coming out to be with us.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much for your mahi in bringing free fares to the political agenda. Such an exciting issue to be supporting. Before becoming an MP, I used to work at Auckland Action Against Poverty, helping people on the benefit access their living costs. And while I know the National Party has suddenly decided that we are in a cost of living crisis, for many of our communities, they've been affected by an inequality crisis that has been going for several generations now. And what I was seeing in my previous work was people getting into debt with work and income to access support to meet their transport costs, whether it was public transport or moving about in their cars. And what is really clear is that if we want to address the inequality crisis, free fares is going to be required and a key component to addressing it. Equally, if we're serious about addressing our climate crisis, we've got to give people the ability to move around their communities without relying on cars. So free fares is key to that too. But it's clear that this is one of the jigsaw pieces in the puzzle that we've got to address. In order to have a frequent and accessible public transport system, we've got to bring the ownership to the public, as well as ensuring that the services are frequent. I know there's been arguments against free fares, such as the quality data that we may collect by charging people. I think these are all barriers that we are very much able to realistically address. What we saw in the recent announcement by government, and I want to commend the Minister for the mahi in bringing down fares, is a great step in the right direction. And what it shows is that it is actually really affordable to create an affordable public transport system for people and communities. And so let's not use cost as a barrier. Let's address the inequality crisis that we're facing by implementing free fares for the communities that you're advocating as a stepping stone to a universal public transport system that guarantees freedom of mobility and reduce our emissions. Kia ora, I hope your petition is successful. I commend you for your work, and I urge the Minister to take action on this issue.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and thank you, Lizzo, for the welcome, and thank you all of you for being here today. I've got to say you're a slightly friendlier and more welcoming crowd than the one that we've had here over the last little period out the front of Parliament. So thank you for being here, and thank you to all of you who have been involved in this campaign. One of the things that really encourages us in the job that we do is to see people coming together to campaign and argue for change and to make things better. And you guys have done an enormously effective job of that and have brought together a range of different groups across the community. So I want to acknowledge the Free Fares campaign for that in the first instance. I also speak to you as a regular bus user. So I live up in Auckland in Mount Roskill, and my bus into work or into town is the 25L bus, which barrels down Dominion Road, and that's really important for me and my family for getting around. And like Jack and Lily, I've got children. They're a little bit younger than you guys, but increasingly they're actually finding that being able to use public transport services gives them incredible freedom to get around our community, to connect with their friends, to do the things that are important for them. And can I acknowledge both of you for your comments in terms of the focus that young people have in our time on the issue of climate change and the way in which you've applied yourselves to this particular issue, which is a critical part of how we bring down New Zealand's emissions. Wes, can I acknowledge you as well for your comments and for bringing forward to us just how important it is for you and people in your community to have public transport that is accessible, that gives you opportunities to connect with people in the community, to access work and to live your life as you would wish to. And that is what we want to see happen as well. Kushbo, you spoke to us about some of those particular cost pressures that students and young people feel. And we don't want to live in a society in which people's choices are limited in terms of accessing education or work or other things because of cost pressure. So that is something that we take on board as well. And Raywin, really great to see you again. We met each other a few weeks ago when you came to speak to me about some of the challenges that our disabled community have with our transport system. And clearly what you're relaying today is that accessibility and cost is a part of that picture as well. The real assurance that I want to give everyone is that making sure that our public transport system is more accessible for everyone is enormously important. This is a huge priority for me as a minister and for our government. We've increased funding that we put into the PT system by around about 50% since we came into government, and that continues to increase as we build up those services. It is a complex picture, and there's a lot that we've got to do to make sure that, as Wes said, as well as having services that are accessible from a cost point of view, we also have services that are reliable and regular for everyone to use. So it's about making sure that we put the money into good services. It's about making sure as well that we put money into making sure that the people who drive our buses have decent wages and conditions, so that we have enough of them to actually do the job and they have a bit of dignity in that important mahi that they do for all of us as well. And then of course it is also about the accessibility and the price of fares. So across all of those areas, we will continue to do everything that we can to keep improving public transport and its accessibility for our communities. Thank you, Lizzo, for your acknowledgement and noting those steps that we have taken. The Community Connect trial for Auckland starts from the 1st of July. That's half price public transport for folks who have a community services card. And obviously the next 3 months, we're also going to have that half price public transport going right across the board. You used a phrase that my boss, the PM Jacinda, is well known for, but there's always more to do. And so certainly what I take on board from today's discussion is that you feel that those are good steps, but there is more that you want us to do in this space. The next big step for us is that we will announce our emissions reduction plan in early May, and that's a result of a huge amount of work over the past year that's gone on into looking at how our transport system and everything that we do, in fact, can be geared relentlessly towards reducing our emissions in the coming years. Clearly, more public transport and more accessible public transport is a big part of that. So we're going to have to do a big reveal at that point, and then we'll be looking at what we can fund and support in the budget. And I've still got to work through that with my colleagues, but I do give you my absolute commitment that we are going to continue working on this issue and making public transport as accessible, as reliable and as regular for people as we need it to be, to reduce our emissions, to open up opportunities for all people across our communities and to have a better urban environment. So thank you again for the mahi that you've done on keeping the flame on this issue going. Look forward to receiving the petition in a moment and continuing to work on this issue with all of you. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, and a special thanks to St Paul's for hosting us here today as well. Thank you.
I just want to ask, will you be funding free fares for under 25s, community service cards and tertiary students in the budget this year?
What I've got to say on that one is I'm continuing to work with the Minister of Finance on what we get through in the budget this year. Working on better public transport is an important part of that, but I can't go and make those commitments until we've got the budget. That'll be coming through in the middle of May.
Awesome. And what about the half public transport fares? They're saying 3 months. Will you be extending this? It would be very, very helpful.
Well, look, we've made the call to bring that in for 3 months in the first instance. That's dealing with the particular pressures that people are facing around cost of living at the moment. It is something that we're going to keep under constant review. We do want to help people through this period. This is one way of doing it. There might be others as well. So we'll be over the next couple of months working out our next steps. But as I say, we're trying to send that message out more broadly beyond that point, that we do want to make public transport more accessible. And obviously that period finishes on the 1st of July, which is when we start the Community Connect pilot. So hopefully you can see the direction of travel there.
So I'll take that as a yes. Let's hope that. We're holding you to this. Okay, and my final question is, I just want to ask a question for some of our allies in the campaign. There are almost 80,000 disabled people in Aotearoa who use the Total Mobility Scheme, and they already get some discounts on public transport, but still face high costs and overall many access barriers. To ensure equity for this group, will the government's 3 months of half public transport fares include further halving the public transport fares paid by Total Mobility cardholders? And will it include halving their taxi fares?
That's something that we are having a look at right now, and we'll have some further announcements around that in the coming week or so to give people certainty in that area. The other thing I would just say with Total Mobility is we recognise that it's been an enormously important scheme for assisting people in the disabled community to be able to access the things that they need in a more affordable way. It opens up opportunities and connection, and we're actually going to be moving through with a much broader review of Total Mobility this year to make sure that that scheme is hitting the mark and getting the support for people who need it.